What's up, everybody? Listen, did you hear it in my voice? Let me just start right from jump and just say welcome. And for those of you who have some great energy and vibes to throw my direction, I need that, right? Because as luck would have it, as preparing for this incredible, exclusive interview with the one and only Fiona Maguire, I end up getting sick, right? Go figure. It just life happens that way, right? But that's not going to stop the show. Listen, we have a phenomenal guest. This is an exclusive interview that we are having. So make sure that you buckle up and make sure you're here. We already got folk in the building already. We got Gareth Wax. Said, you got it, big dog. Listen, thank you for being here, Gareth. I'm asking anybody that jumps in to make sure you share this because we want to get as much support for our guest today as possible. So now, without further ado, share it, buckle up, get ready for a great conversation that's going to happen in 3, 2, 1. Let's go. What's up, everybody? My name is Oliver Marcel, author, speaker, and coach in the relationship building and men's enrichment spaces. And welcome to this exclusive interview with Fiona Maguire. Today, we got Gareth Wax in the building. Boom, Gareth Wax. We have our guest in the comments as well saying, be great to know who's here. So listen, if you're watching, and if you're watching us now while it's streaming live, we need you to jump in the comments. We want you to interact with us today. We want you to ask questions to our guests. We want to make sure that you are here watching it. We also want you to share it wherever if you're watching this right now and you're watching it on LinkedIn, share it to your LinkedIn profile. If you're watching it via the StreamYard link, if somebody gave you the StreamYard link, feel free to send that StreamYard link to somebody else, whether it be in WhatsApp or your text message. We want to get as many people in here as possible. Claire S is in the building, says, hi, Fiona. Claire is here. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. If I didn't, please don't hold it against me. Thank you for being here. And anybody else who's here, make sure that you are jumping in the comments. This is going to be an inspiring conversation. This is going to be an enriching conversation. This is going to be an eye-opening conversation. And we got folks jumping in. We got Mike Phillips in the comments. I'm here looking forward to hearing from you, Fiona. I'm on StreamYard in the UK. Best to all. Mike, thank you for being here. We got Alexander in the comments. Gareth says, I'm ready. We got Christiana in the comments. We got John Russell in the comments. Thank you for being here, guys. Thank you for supporting our guest today. So listen, we're going to get right into it. I'm not going to do no more talking. We want to see her face in the place, right? We got Georgia Vargas is in the building as well. John said, I love Oliver's voice, so silky smooth. I love it. Hey, Fiona, thank you for being here. Listen, we have Fiona Maguire in the house today. Fiona has a incredible gift. I'm not going to say too much about her because I want her to actually talk about herself when she comes on. Fiona is a intuitive transformational coach, and you're going to see why in just a second when I bring her on. Shout out to Boomy in the comments as well that's watching. Listen, she very interesting journey that we're going to start right off the bat talking about in terms of her being a psychologist and moving into this intuitive transformational coaching space, what that looks like. What does an intuitive transformational coach do? what is the transformation that you can expect. There's going to be some great conversation that comes out of this. So without further ado, I'm going to bring up our guest of the hour, none other than Fiona Maguire. Hey, hey,
Hey,
how
hey,
are you?
I'm very good. Thank you so much for everything. And what a star being here when you've got a cold. Thank you so much.
That
And
is
thank you.
awesome. Listen, we got folk jumping in the comments that are here to support you. We got Raj in the comments. Shout out to Raj. Hi, Fiona and Oliver. We got Karen Bashford in the comments. Shout out to Karen. Hi, Fiona here. We got a bunch of folk that are watching and that are a part of this, and we thank you for doing that. Please, again, like I said, share this. You can share that. Feel free to share that StreamYard link. It is not exclusive. You can share it, or if you're watching on LinkedIn, share it to your LinkedIn feed as well, so we can get some folk coming in. Listen, Fiona, first of all, thank you for being here. This time is all about you, right? So let's jump right into the deep end. You ready?
Yep.
So, first of all, introduce yourself and tell us what you do, and then we'll go back and get some of the backstory.
Okay. So my main superpower is using my intuition to find out what's going on with people, what's going on in the background. And what I mean by the background is in their unconscious mind. Like, what's their story? What are they keeping alive from their past that is sabotaging their future? And I teach them how to really be rooted into their body, into their true self, and feel what's true for them, and get out of their head, get out the stories that they're telling themselves, get into their heart and know where they want to go to, like what's their passion, what's alive in them, and clear everything out energetically, mentally, physically, on all levels of them so they get to move forward.
Wow.
So I was a psychologist. That's
Okay.
what I went to university for. And I was assistant psychologist working in a psychiatric unit for children in a hospital. And I loved my job.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of resonated more with the patients than I did with the doctors.
Mm,
And what
interesting.
it was specifically is that, I'd done a 4-year psychological study, and it was interesting in theory, but none of it really meant that much when I was in the field working with children. And what I realized, it was really my own inner knowing that I could trust. So an example of that is there was a teenager that got brought in. She was 15 or 16. She's one of the older people in the unit. And she was at high risk of killing herself or seriously hurting other people. And I took the risk because I felt in my heart that what she needed more than anything else in the world was actually to be trusted. And
Mm,
my deep feeling was all she wanted to do was go out and play with the other kids. She wanted to play. She was 15. She was still a child. She wanted to play. And once she finished shouting and swearing and spitting and hitting and doing all those things that she was doing, when
mm-hmm.
it was me and her on her own, she carried on verbally, but she didn't do any of the other stuff. And she'd never done that with me. And I just opened myself up, felt what she wanted, felt what she needed, had an honest conversation with her, and risked my whole job, my whole career to take her out and play with the other kids. And it worked out. She had a great time. She didn't do anything wrong, thank God.
Mm-hmm.
And I was always just pushing boundaries because what I felt, I trusted. I didn't trust what the book said. And
Okay.
I was always getting in trouble for it. But it's proved to be right in my life. And so
Wow.
people can hide from themselves, so they can hide behind a diagnosis. But deep in our heart, we know what we want and we know where we want to go. And that's really where I want to show people. I want to
Okay.
bring them back to their heart and moving forward as themselves, trusting themselves.
Wow. So that's that, and that's a tall order, and we're going to kind of break down that and look at what that looks like. We got a Larry, excuse me, Coslet in the comments said, "This listen, we're getting amazing endorsements already for Fiona. So make sure if you're watching now that you are paying attention. This woman is from another planet." Larry says, "I worked with her for 6 weeks. She entirely shifted my way of thinking. I've been trying to get a problem shifted for over 20 years. 6 sessions with this wondrous woman shifted the whole thing. Brilliant." So that experience you just shared, is that what birthed the transition from the psychology space into where you are now with an intuitive transformation? Is that was that the turning point, that experience, that story you shared?
It wasn't the turning point. The turning point was actually skidding in snow in a car. I'd only like to drive 6 weeks into it, and I hit a tree, and my intuition said, "You have to leave." And at that point, I just looked at the whole thing, and I realized that in myself, I didn't believe psychology worked
Wow. Okay.
because people were talking themselves further into their trauma. They were talking to them. They're talking themselves further into their own belief patterns, which is your unconscious conditioning, and they were talking themselves out of being who they really are, getting rid of their demons, getting rid of all the rubbish in their heads and in their body, and actually being free to move forward. And once I realized that, I was just like, I can't do this anymore. So I went part time and became a physical therapist. And I was only thinking about this today. I actually started working with this one guy just purely with his energy because he kept begging me. I finally said, okay. And at the time, I really didn't know what I was doing, but I just trusted that what I was clearing would result in a change.
Mhm.
And what transpired was this guy was a gambler. He was sometimes going to Gamblers Anonymous, GA, and it hadn't shifted for him completely. He was still trying to win in life. He was playing this win-lose game.
Mhm.
And then I don't remember how many sessions we had. And I honestly did, I hadn't systematized what I was doing. I was just clearing energy every time I saw him. Then one day, that was it. He just gave up gambling. He had no need for it anymore. And
Mm.
then I learned how to systematize it because I went on a course called Energetic NLP, and I realized I know this. I know this in my heart. And what that course helped me did is really trust in my intuition, but also to systematize it so I could work with people in a way that made conscious sense rather than just intuitive sense. So that was the
Hmm.
marriage that really set me free and
That was the
gave
thing
me the
that,
courage to do this. Yeah.
and it's interesting, right? You talk about hitting a tree, right?
Yeah.
Which would be a fairly traumatic experience for anyone, right? And it's often, and I find this to be so true in so many cases, that our purpose is often birthed out of some kind of pain, some kind of scenario that kind of opens our eyes to say, wait a minute, this, I belong here and maybe not there, or it causes you to have some kind of transition. So I love that you shared that story. You talked about this gentleman who was gambling, right? And working with his energy, and this thing just was removed, right?
Yeah.
And the removal of energy is a thing. Can you explain that, like energy removal? Larry talked about shifting, right? And a big part of that shifting, I would imagine, is energy removal. And so what is that for those of us who may not know what that is? Programming through energy removal. What does that look like?
So I'll give a case study and I'll just call this lady Tina. It's a name I've just made up in my head.
Okay.
And Tina came to see me and she believed that she had a problem with rejection because the coach that referred her to me said, "Yeah, this is what's going on for you. It's a problem with rejection."
Hmm.
And I just said, "Oh, okay, great. But how is this showing up in your life?" And she said, "Oh, she ran her own business. She was very successful. She's an entrepreneur."
Hmm.
And she just said, "I've been having problems with my staff, but now these problems are starting to go into my relationship with my husband."
Okay.
And straight away, I could tell that the real problem was anger. And underneath that was a trauma. And I knew more or less where it come from. But she wasn't, I actually said that to her in a consultation. And she was like, "I'm not angry." And I was like, "Okay, then,
Okay.
okay. So we carried on with the consultation and she signed up for my coaching package. And fairly soon she knew what was going on for her. She knew that it was anger, but it was rightly a defense mechanism. And it was because she'd been bullied as a child. So what we did, and I don't spend a lot of time in the past,
Mhm.
but I set up an energy exercise where the person's able to go back into the past and able to just briefly notice what they notice, feel what they feel. And she could feel the intensity of the anger that she felt at the time.
Hmm.
And also, she was just really, really frightened. And she thought that if she expressed her anger at the time, then the bullying would get worse or would escalate into violence rather than just verbally. So what I helped her do is I took her into the present moment, and then we literally removed the energy of the anger. And when we removed the energy of the anger, that's when she got the insights. That's when she could see how all of that had played out in her life and how that one incident had kept playing out in all her relationships, where
Hmm.
she would instantly jump into a defense mechanism.
Hmm.
So she would actually then become passive aggressive, or she would show her overwhelm and her anger would be bubbling up to the surface. And that's why people were refraining from her. But interestingly enough, she also had almost an equal amount of love. But it was only the people that got close enough to her to see that love knew it. And that was the beauty of being able to see it all. Because once she removed the anger, she had the clarity around her behavior and how that felt inside of her. But then she could also see the love that she had. And I helped her like really put that foremost in front of everything.
Hmm.
So to show it to her husband to begin with, then to show it to her staff. She was already showing it to some of her nieces and nephews. So I knew it had shifted because I poke the bear, I poke the emotion.
Hmm.
I purposely try to anger them just to see if
Wow.
it's gone.
Okay.
But I have to build enough trust for that to happen.
Right.
And if it's still there, then it's like, okay, see how that feels in your body. So it's okay. It's like a win-win, but there's got to be enough rapport there. But how she knew that she'd finally let it go, she was at work one Saturday morning. She was by herself. A man walked into her office and he was being passive aggressive with her. And normally this would have freaked her out. She would have went into passive aggression. It wouldn't have ended up a good story. Instead, she was able to say to the man, I'm really sorry, the office should be closed. I've got workmen out back doing something. So that was a defense mechanism. She can now use her mind rather than go into the energy that was in her body. And so if you give me your details, I'll get straight back to you later today or Monday morning. I'm so sorry, sir, that you've wasted your time coming here. So she was able to be calm. She was able to be in her body. She was able to be present. Where before the emotion of anger would have been just triggered, and she wouldn't have been able to deal with that situation calmly.
Hmm. I'm really interested in that, and let me say this too, Fiona. As we go through, I know there's some things you want to throw up on the screen, so just you can just make sure you cue me on those things when you want them to appear. That's so. I hope I know I'm not the only one that's thinking this. For those that are watching, that's so that's so incredible that you can sit with someone who can help you to understand those emotions, right? Be sensitive to those emotions and redirect them or to remove them as it relates to the energy. I think that so many of us could benefit from that, right? And for those of you who are watching who are like, yeah, I could benefit from that, you'll find out today how you can connect with Fiona. We're going to talk about that a little later on in our conversation, but you talking about that, right, and creating that level of emotional sensitivity um actually leads me into something else I want to ask you. You're kind of leading me exactly where I'm trying to go. um Emotional sensitivity can be overwhelming. You talked about the lady with anger, um and I see your question, Illyri, and I'll ask that in just a second. Because it can be somewhat overwhelming, right? Especially today in today's climate. Um, how do you teach people to manage that sensitivity or the angst, if you will, that sensitivity causes in their lives? How do you teach people to manage that in a healthier way?
Okay, so there's a lot more sensitive people in the world now, and the label highly sensitive person has, you know, as more people know more about it. I'm one myself, and I only found that out 6 years ago or something like that, because I'm not that into labels. And there's empaths, and there's differences between all three of them. But more and more people are more sensitive to emotions, and more sensitive to energy in general, loud noises, taking things personally. But we're actually, a highly sensitive person, we're born in a particular way. Our brains are wired in a different way than non-highly sensitive people.
Mhm.
We process information very quickly because we take in more information per second than other people, like, a lot more information. And so our brain has to work quickly to process it all. But what this can do is that, because we're so sensitive to the outside, we try and manage, we try and control the outside environment to make us feel calm and safe. Because, our sensitivity, we're picking up on the energy all of the time. We're picking up on other people's emotions all of the time.
Mhm.
And that can feel like a real weight, a real burden, and bring us down. So if you learn how to actually be in your body, ground yourself, anchor yourself into the ground and into yourself,
Mhm.
and know exactly what you are feeling rather than your energy being scattered all over the place, then that gives you more clarity. But
Mhm.
also by realizing that the reason why you're reading energy in the first place is so
Mhm.
you control the environment, so you feel better, stops you feeling like a victim, and actually motivates you to do that in a different way. So we are reading energy because we're trying to keep ourselves safe.
Mhm.
But we're looking outside of ourselves to do that rather than inside of ourselves to do it.
Mhm.
So if you master your own energy, you learn how to ground, you learn how to stay in your energy, you learn how to take your energy back, you learn not how to put your energy outwards,
Mhm.
then you can really, really change quickly. So I had a young lady in her mid to late 20s, and I'm just going to call her Joe. And I actually put a case study on my website. Now, Joe literally thought she was going crazy
Mhm.
because her energy was scattered all over the place all of the time. She could never focus on what she was doing. She was always tired. She was always overwhelmed because her energy was just going everywhere, always. I done a simple exercise called Magnet in the Lake, which is available free on my website and in my book. And she realized while she was releasing this energy, how much energy she was carrying around with her, how much emotions, how much thinking, how much conditioning that was not hers.
Mhm.
And that was a revelation to her. She was just like, damn, I just feel so much lighter. And
Wow.
again, it gives you clarity, and in clarity you can focus. And her life changed completely. She stopped doing what she was doing. She pursued her own business. She got married. She moved abroad. Everything just changed like that for her as soon as she understood how to work with her own energy.
Wow. So and you so and again, you tell me when you're ready for this. I know there's a graph that kind of describes that transformational process, and let me know when you want to put that up. But I was just kind of thinking about that as you were talking, and that there is a portion of this where you're letting go. There is a portion of this where you're connecting to your intuitive self, right? And some of the things that you talked about, I think is really incredible. Before we go further, Larry had a question. I think is a really great question. Can you ask when did you realize you had this special skill? How old were you when you realized you could read people's energy?
I think I didn't realize it until I was probably left school, because for me it was completely normal.
Hmm.
I just thought everybody could read everyone else's emotions. Everybody knew what everybody else was feeling. Because it was so much part of me that I just thought that everyone could do it. I didn't question it. And it was only like being in school and looking at how nasty kids could be to each other and just not understanding it. Because if you know how you feel and you know how they feel, why would you be nasty to somebody else? Because then I was just feeling double the pain. I was feeling my pain and their pain. So bullying and all that didn't make sense to me.
Hmm.
And so it was always natural for me. It was one of the things that made me study psychology, because when I realized that people didn't understand their own emotions and didn't take their feelings into account, and there is a difference between feelings and emotions, which there might not be time to go into in this call. um, I wanted to understand that, like, why didn't they, and what made people tick if it wasn't their emotions and their feelings.
Hmm.
But psychology didn't give me the answers.
Right.
The
Yeah.
answers was always in intuition. It was always in reading people. It was always encouraging them to be in themselves, to see what's really there.
Hmm. Okay. And so yeah, that so it was kind of in you,
Yeah,
but
I
again,
was
these
born a highly sensitive person.
right. But then you have these experiences that kind of bring it to the forefront or bring it to your awareness, so to speak, that wait a minute, this is something that is kind of innate in me. And I can do this. I love that. Um
And
and I
so-called different. And I use quote marks because I believe everyone's intuitive. Everybody, is built to feel what they feel, know their emotions, know what they're thinking. But we've just, as a whole society, we dissociated into our head. We've put so much
Mhm.
behind the intellectual knowledge
Yeah.
that we've forgotten, well, what's our heart? What's the purpose of being in our body? What's the purpose of being intuitive? And it's only just starting to gain momentum now again.
Hmm. And interestingly enough, um, I like that you said that. And I think that's very encouraging and inspiring to myself and to those that are watching that uh, there is something in you, right? It's in you. You believe that everybody has that thing in them. Um, but it's really about being able to connect or reconnect, if you will, with the safety of being in your body, right? And understanding what that looks like. And that's something that you help clients with is reconnecting with the just with that safety, with being safe, with being able to know your body. What about that? So I'm trying to pick my words carefully, Fiona. Right, and let me tell you why I'm trying to pick my words carefully. I don't want to ask questions that actually cause you to give away proprietary information, because what we really want is for people to actually come work with you. So if you hear me kind of stumbling over my questions, that's the reason why I'm like, man, how can I ask this so that she doesn't give it all away, because we don't want you to give it all away. We want some folks to come and work with you for those 6 sessions. But as it relates to reconnecting with the safety in your body, that's a really important concept. And I think that's a missing piece for a lot of us as it relates to us navigating life successfully. So share a little bit about the process of reconnecting with your body, and how do you guide people to experience that level of safety?
So people think when they've experienced trauma, or when they've experienced prolonged stress, or just through conditioning, that you are what you think, not what you feel, and what you feel is not important.
Mhm.
And intellect wins, and you've got to rationalize and analyze. Our whole educational system is still set up to teach us that we've got to be in our head, that our intelligence is more important. And yet, even 20, 30 years ago, it was proven that emotional IQ gets you further in life quicker than any intellectual intelligence could. But,
Mm, wow.
when we experience trauma and prolonged stress, anxiety, panic attacks, we're actually leaving our body. We're becoming dissociated. So our energy is actually up here. And this is a scientific fact. I'm not making this up.
Mhm.
Dissociation is your energy, your spirit, your being leaves your body. But for a lot of people, they're semi-dissociated. They're in their head. They're kind of cut off from here down. They don't feel anything. They're just in their head intellectualizing. And when you're like that, and then you suddenly get put into your body because you experience anger, for example, something happens and it angers you, or you feel a strong emotion, you go into your body and so many feelings and emotions being suppressed in your body that the first feelings come up will be anger. Now, anger feels incredibly powerful. Everybody knows that. But if you've been cut off to your feelings and suddenly you feel angry, that's scary to you. The power feels like it's against you.
Mhm.
And so then you go back out again because that's your safety. And I could go into the science of this. I am a psychologist. So this is what people love about me. I've got all these skills, and yet I'm fully based in science. I've got my 2 feet planted in science, and my heart is open to the spiritual world and the energy and everything else. And hopefully I'm grounded and I balance both of them. Because, for some people, it's too much of a leap.
Mhm.
So I help people feel the safety in their body. And how I do that is I bring them through a very simple exercise of feeling into their body and inquiring, not with their mind, but with their physical sensations of feeling what that is like. And being with me, they trust me, they know I'm there, I'm safe, I'm watching all the energy, I'm making sure that they're not going into trauma, they're not reliving anything. So I'm watching all of it on many levels, and I'm totally with them. And then quite quickly, they're like, damn, this actually feels all right. This feels good. And there's a few people on this call that's experienced this with
Mhm.
me. And then they get to ground and they're like, wow, I can be really anchored in myself. It's like I've got a staff in the ground and I'm holding on to it and I feel strong and powerful as I'm rooted and I'm upright in myself.
Mhm.
And that drops away so many stories that we've told ourselves about needing to feel safe in the outside world, needing to be successful because the outside world says we are. And this is the greatest thing about working with energy is once you change the energy, you transform thousands of beliefs like that
Mm.
because they've got no foundation. It's like pulling the bottom card or the bottom brick and everything else falls down.
That's a great analogy too, because I know that many people that resonates with many people because there's so many things that we're juggling, so many things that we're battling, so many things that distress us. And what you're saying is that just by uh, addressing the energy piece, you can address all those other things as well. And I love that you said that because in the coaching space, I often tell individuals you should really be looking for the underlying need, right? We
Mhm.
often, and I give this example all the time, if my head hurts or my neck hurts consistently, yes, I can take Excedrin or I can take Motrin and all these different things to get the pain away. But until I go to the doctor and the doctor's like, hey, listen, the issue's not your neck or your head, it's actually your back. And
Mhm.
once we fix that, you organically fix the things that are attached to it. So I love that you gave that analogy. I know that everyone under the sound of our voices that resonates with. And so if that resonates with you and you're listening now, she gave you the answer to how to deal with that, man. I absolutely love that. You also answered a question that I did not ask, and I was going to ask a little later on, which is what do you say to people who are like, man, this whole energy thing and this whole space just seems really out there for me. I don't know if I can handle that. And you said very frankly, I'm I'm planted in psychology, right? So there is some psychological backing to the efficacy of this process, which I think is phenomenal.
But also physics, anatomy, and physiology.
Hmm.
I spent my whole life trying to explain to myself and find out if what I knew intuitively was true.
Mm.
My whole life, I'm not kidding, I'm 50 now, and I just started reading books about it. I'm dyslexic, so actually I didn't start reading books about it until I was like 12, 14 or something.
Hmm.
But I was asking loads of questions. I was brought up a Catholic. I was asking loads of questions. I wanted to know. I wanted to know the big questions in life. So the interesting thing, when I stopped being a psychologist and I became a physical therapist,
Hmm.
everyone that saw me for physical therapy had a psychological problem. And I'd already noticed that all the children in the psychiatric unit had physical problems. So this fascinated me. I was like, okay, so, our mind and our body are definitely related. And I wonder which one came first. And that was a big question for me. And
Yeah.
what I realized was actually it was what we were telling ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
the thinking that was going on in our heads, probably through our conditioning, that was actually causing, to use your example, the back pain.
Mm-hmm.
Like, did you feel that you couldn't stand up for yourself? Did you feel that you couldn't make a stand in the world because you didn't have the money, that you weren't financially secure, that you weren't rooted in something, that you didn't belong?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't use all these throwaway, oh, this means that and that means that, like a lot of energy workers do, because I don't need to. I can see what it belongs to because I can just look in the body and see what's going on.
Mm-hmm. I think that's great because, in this world where this day and age where we just have, the pandemic birthed a lot of coaches. The
Yeah,
pandemic birthed a lot of people who claim to have skills in one area or another, who claim to be able to help you release in one way or another, or claim to help you be able to build in one way or another. I love the fact that you're grounded in a very logical space, even though we're dealing with emotional and spiritual components, that you are grounded in a very logical space that allows you to connect the dots, that allows you to close the gaps, that allows you to put some level of explanation, if you will, and clarification behind the process that you take people through
yeah.
as it relates to getting them to that level of transformation. So I think that's awesome. And listen, hear me, for those who are watching and listening, I'm not knocking anybody else
No, me neither. Not
who
at all.
doesn't have that. But for as a client, if I'm going to be a client of you, Fiona, I think it's as a client, it's really great to know that the balance between the work that's happening emotionally and spiritually, uh, there are some dots that connect to what's happening physically
Yeah,
and psychologically. I like that. I
great.
like
When you put my slide up,
Okay.
will I be still visible or not? Because I also want to turn on my lights.
Okay. I can tell me which one you want to put up, and I'll put it up so
The
that it
process
covers us,
one.
and you can go ahead and do what you need to do.
Yeah, the process ones. I'll just turn on my lights.
All right. And while she's doing that, listen, be prepared to uh, contact her, because I know that this is resonating with folks. Um, and so be prepared to contact with her. Go ahead, Fiona. You can go ahead and talk us through this.
So this is my 5-stage process. So it's really important for people to understand where they are. And that might sound a bit like, well, everybody knows where they are, but they don't. Because what's really going on, not the story that you're telling yourself, not the story that you've made up, but what is really happening right now? What is the real pain? What is really not serving you? What thoughts, what feelings, what emotions are you having that are not serving you? And I help you get a conscious understanding of that. Because when we understand something consciously, we can then let it go. We can then use our imagination and we can use other things. So it's by you understanding, it gives you a feeling of safety and it calms you down. So then we can move into the stage of letting go. And primarily, and for the reasons why I've explained, I do that with working with your energy. Because if you take the emotional charge away from what happened, you get wisdom and you get clarity and you can see it more clearly. And lots of beliefs change at once, like I've mentioned. And then the thing that also makes me different is I want to connect you with your intuition and your higher self. I love working with people, but I don't need to hold on to you. I want to set you free. I want to give you the tools so you know how to work with yourself and for yourself, and that you can shine and you can use these exercises that I'm teaching you to move forward. And then we bring the whole process together. So, how do you move forward in your life, being your true self rather than your conditioning and the thoughts and everything you came to the sessions with? And this is why I do, to start with, a 6-session coaching package, is because I'm bringing in all of these elements. We might jump from one element to the other, depending on what's needed in the particular session. But it's organized in a really beautiful way. You start with an aim, we go through it, we look at it, we do whatever part of the stages are needed, maybe all of them. And at the end of it, you see that there's a shift. You see that that's gone. And that's
Yeah.
the beauty of the way I work with you.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Fiona Gazard is in the comments. Shout out to Fiona. Loving this, Fiona. Demonstrating how spiritual work is more grounded in reality than people give it credit for. Brilliant. It
Thanks.
is. It is brilliant indeed. And thank you for sharing that process, because you often hear people talk about letting go, right? And the letting go that they're talking about is really just a temporary releasing the hold, not necessarily letting go, right?
Mhm.
Means we're, like if I'm holding on to this and you say let it go, and I just open my hand a little bit, I'm really not at the point where I really want you to take this thing from me, but let me just see what it feels like to loosen my grip. And that's not what you're talking about here. You're talking about getting people to a process where they are moving forward in their true self. And in order to do that, there are some things you have to release and get rid of. Recognize first, of course, with your help, and then release with your help, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
So I worked with a client, and let's just call her Claire for the want of another name. And she was suffering from clinical depression that she'd had on and off throughout her whole life. And I got her grounded. I got her in her body. I got her to see that all she's experiencing is her thinking.
Mhm.
And depression is the remuneration of thoughts that you're telling yourself over and over again. So you're replaying the same record all the
Yeah.
time. That's what causes depression. That's what keeps it going. And if you're telling yourself the same thing, you're asking yourself the same questions, and you're staying in the past.
Mhm.
So that's like the psychological bit and the thinking bit of it. But again, it was like she had certain stories that she was telling herself, things that she was blaming herself for. So one of these things we looked at had something to do with property, and I won't give too many details because I don't want to reveal who she is. And obviously Claire's not her real name. And I didn't get what was this fascination with property. And then I read her energy, and I was like, ask her about her childhood. That's what came. So I asked her about her childhood. And what she realized herself was that her safety came from the place, the home that she grew up in, and the area around it. It didn't come from inside of her. It didn't
Mhm.
come from her family. It didn't come from her education, which is all the normal things. It came from her home. So in her unconscious mind, property equals safety. It equals abundance. It equals success.
Mhm.
It equals all the good things in life because that's
Mhm.
safety.
Mhm.
And we attach loads of things to safety. It's
Yeah.
just the way the mind works. It's the way our ego works. It's how our conditioning works. So by her realizing that, they were like light bulb moments that went off for her.
Mhm.
And then she was able to actually really let go of that idea long enough to experience what it was like to be deeply rooted in her body. And then she realized that actually that really was a safe place.
Mm.
And then more beautifully, she could tell the difference between when she was rooted in her body and when she was just following a story in her head. So now she doesn't get lost in her head, and she's able to root herself in her body. And I'm still working with this lady, and this is what's important. You can let something go. You can let something go on a major level. But if you keep the thoughts and the emotion in place that created it in the first place,
Mhm.
you're going to go back into that. And that's why it's important that you continue the exercises, that we do the 6 sessions so we completely let it go and you learn how not to pick it up again.
Mm. That's awesome. That's awesome. I earlier in our conversation, you talked about trauma and prolonged stress and how that can disconnect us, right, from our emotions. You also talked about how we need to feel our emotions, right? You talked about that in our conversation as well. Um, this is going to sound like a no-brainer kind of question, but I'm sure you are aware of this too. There's so many people who probably don't really know the importance of not suppressing your emotions. Like sometimes we're taught that, hey, like I can think about, just myself, coming up as a young male child, something happens and you want to cry, but they're like, don't you cry about that. And you suppress it, you suck it
Yeah.
up, right? Why is it so important not to suppress your emotions? And how can we safely begin that process to stop doing that?
So I wasn't going to get into this, but I will very briefly. Our emotions are our body's reaction to our thinking. And our thinking is always about the past and the future.
Hmm.
Our actual feelings are something that's deep down. That's the truth of what's going on for us in the moment. So if you use your example, a child is crying. They're crying because they have a need.
Hmm.
And that need might be just to express what they're feeling. And once they express what they're feeling, it's released. That's how the system is built. It has a bell curve that lasts 45 seconds. If we're allowed to cry, experience it, and then let it go. But what happens too often is someone comes in and tells you not to have the emotion, not to have the feeling,
Hmm.
or someone tells you it's wrong, no one explains it to you. So it gets suppressed inside of you. Like I was talking about Tina earlier. If someone actually said to her, you have the right to be angry the way that you're being bullied, and she felt safe enough to talk about it, and someone was intelligent enough to actually reconfirm her feelings to her and validate them, she
Hmm.
wouldn't have had to suppress them. If she didn't suppress them, she wouldn't have become this passive aggressive person she could be as an adult that couldn't get on with people because she was too afraid.
Hmm. Right.
So suppression of emotions and feelings, they lead to illness. The first person to talk about it was Freud,
Hmm.
and probably even before him. But we learn that's probably the most sensible thing he actually said um, in the psychology degree that I done.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
it was, suppressing those emotions cause illness. So to
Yes.
get rid of that emotional charge in the body, as I've said loads of times before, is so different.
Yeah.
So I'd like, if I may, to quickly give a case study, and I'm going to ask you to throw up a slide. It
Sure.
won't be long.
Sure.
So, and we get to the slide, and you'll know which one it is when I mention it. So
Hmm.
I worked with this young man with OCD, and we're
Hmm.
going to call him Andrew.
Okay.
And Andrew came to me, and I asked him. So he's showing in the picture already. I asked him, "What is OCD to you?" And he said, "It's a monster in my head that never shuts up." I never heard a better definition of OCD in my life: obsessive compulsive disorder, a
Yeah.
monster in my head that never shuts up. Brilliant. So I said to him, "Well, what do you want to do with that monster?" And he's like, "What?" I'm like, "What do you want to do with a monster?" Because the thing is, and again, I'm not putting anyone else down, and there is brain chemistry and there is hormones and there is all of those great biological stuff. But basically, we make stuff up and we make up stories in our head that makes it worse.
Yeah.
So I said to him, he's 15 years old. Was he 15 at the time? No, I think he was 13. I said to him, somewhere between 13 and 15, "Andrew, what do you want to do with the monster?" And he's like, "What?" I'm like, "What do you want to do with it?" I didn't tell him you created it, therefore you can destroy it. I just said to him,
Mhm.
"What do you want to do with it?" And he said, "Well, I want to kill it." I was like, "Great, let's kill it." He's like, "Can we?" I'm like, "Yeah, let's give it a go. Let's get in there, let's give it a go."
Yeah.
So I got him to feel it in his body, and I'd done all kinds of work with him, and we worked purely energetically. He was a kid. Let's just work with his imagination. So at the end of the session, like I said, I poked him. I said, "Well, is it gone?" He said, "Yeah, it's gone." I'm like, "Great." And I'm like, "Well, just say some of those old thoughts that you used to have, that you said you're OCD, they come back. What would you think now?" And he thought about it and he said, "Well, they're bound to come back in 2 or 3 months, aren't they?" And I was like, "Why? We've killed the monster." And he looked at me. I was like, "Do dead things come back alive?" And he was
Mm.
like, "No, that's it. We've killed the monster, haven't we?" And I said, "We have killed the monster, but just say, because that's the way the mind works, it repeats things. Just say some of those thoughts come back. What are you going to do about it?" And he said, "Well, I'm going to do what you showed me. I'm going to get in my body. I'm going to be in touch with what's going on for me. I'm going to express it rather than hide it. And I'm going to move forward." And those were his words. And if he wasn't on the computer screen, I'd have hugged him and gave him a kiss. Just one session and two calls. 2 small telephone calls in 2 years. He was OCD free for 2 years.
Wow. Wow.
And that was just one session, and no one had ever touched it. And the reason why he had it was because the emotional charge in his household was too much for him as a sensitive being to be with. And when that emotional charge got even stronger because he hit adolescence, he started to have girlfriends, there was other stuff involved. That's when
Mhm.
that started to come back. Unfortunately, his parents wouldn't pay for him to work with me anymore. And being a teenager, we lost contact.
Yeah.
But I did hear recently that he's doing very well as a young adult.
That's awesome. That is awesome. That's a great testament, along with the other ones that you shared, to the transformation that you provide, right? And it's a simple process. I'm using the word simple loosely, but you we resonate with something, and then we crave the transformation that something provides. And all of us can resonate to what you're talking about, with the necessity to remove um, the emotional sensitivity, right? To to shift as it relates to energy removal. We can all attest to the fact that we can benefit from that, right? And then to hear that wonderful story about that young man that you were able to help kill the monster,
Yeah,
is such an awesome thing. Illyri, I put up her comment earlier, that you're able to do this uh, remotely, and you just talked about the fact that with the young man, over phone calls in one session. Christiana Ebert is in the comments as well. Said, I worked with Fiona for 8 weeks. Actually, I started 2 sessions and it felt so good that I decided to begin a 6-week session program. With anxiety and depression resulting from emotional and domestic physical abuse, I'd seen a lot of psychologists, mostly incentivizing me to be fixed. I suddenly realized that I didn't need to be fixed. I needed to be me. Powerful statement. And
yeah,
trust myself. These are these were the most amazing, comforting, reassuring sessions, allowing me to believe in myself. And we didn't get the rest of it and learn. I'm assuming learn about herself. And so, you guys who are watching, and all of you who may get the opportunity to watch this at a later time, because this will be available for you to watch at a later time, you are hearing firsthand the process that Fiona takes her clients through, the pain points that she is able to address, and the transformation that she provides. Now, let me ask you this. You talked about the young man, and we're kind of coming up to the end of our time together. So I'm trying to squeeze as many questions as I can. Okay.
mhm,
So you talked about the young man who had OCD, right? And you said that his parents didn't want to really pay for them to continue to work with you, but you're hearing he's doing well. I would imagine that there are some people who, just like we talked about earlier, um, you once you do this, right? Maybe it might be, and you tell me if I'm wrong. Maybe it might be a one and done, or maybe there are some things that you need to continuously apply. So, kind of talk about, how do we, after gaining that transformation, how do we not fall back?
You don't fall back by reminding yourself that being in your body and clearing the energy is what works for you. It
Mm,
it, it just is what works, because it's so easy to fall back into patterns. If someone's whatever age they are,
mhm,
and they see me a couple of times, that they're going to get a lot of transformation. But if they really experience the energy work enough and the change that it's made enough to be motivated to keep doing it, you know and that's the thing. Children are great
mhm.
because they're just open,
Yeah.
and you can just get in there and work with them, and they haven't got so much built up, because the trouble is the mind creates evidence of what it believes in, even if it's not true,
Mhm.
because that's what's been put in there when you as a youngster, and you're just finding evidence for it.
Yeah.
So it's about like taking away what's underneath all of that evidence, so that all falls down, and then living your life differently. And that's got to include doing the energy exercises, grounding, meditating. And it's not hard work, people, because once you feel the benefits of it, you want to do it. Because when you don't do it, you realize that you start to slip backwards, and not back to where you was. But why would you want to be anything different than, really loving and enjoying your life once you've
Right.
experienced that?
Wow. That's awesome. Listen, there are so many other things that I could talk to you about. I could keep you here probably for the next hour and a half or more talking about these things, but I know that your time is important. There's two last things I'm going to ask from you. And here's the first. The first is a two-parter. And that is, first part of that is there a piece of advice, if there was one piece of advice that you could give somebody who's struggling with overwhelm, who's struggling with emotional overwhelm, who is has some energy that they need to remove, who's disconnected from themselves, what would that one piece of advice be? And then if there's anything else as you're giving that piece of advice that you'd like to share uh, while you're giving that piece of advice, now is the time to do it. And then we'll talk about what the second one is in a second. I'm going to spotlight you, and you just talk to the folk that are
Okay.
listening. I said spotlight, not remove. How about that?
So the one piece of advice I would give probably won't come as a surprise, and that piece of advice is, please learn how to work with your own energy. Now, as I said, this encompasses so many things. It's not woo woo. You are energy. Your thoughts, your emotions, everything you are is energy. And you can do this by working with me. I'd love to have a free consultation with you. If working with me is too much for you right now or is out of your budget, then you can learn how to master your energy with my Master Your Energy program that I've got online. That's only £97, and it's going to last 21 days. You have lifetime access, and you can learn everything I've spoken about on there. So if you're a good self-learner, go for it. That's great for you, and it's only £97. The other thing that you can have for absolutely free when you sign up to my website, when you send me your email, or you sign into my website, www.fionamaguire.com, basically my name, is you can get my free energy ebook, which we do have a slide somewhere, but I don't know where he is at the moment. So there's free options for you to learn how to work with and master your energy. And I would love to have a chat with you. So reach out to me and have a chat with me, and that'll be great. Site there, that was great. I think you're muted.
Yeah, that would help if I was not muted. Thank you. So you talked about, let's put the book up. You talked about the book, which leads into the second thing I was going to ask, which is the last thing, is how people can get a hold of you. What resources do you have available? You talked about the book. This is the book here. And can they get this on your website?
They can. So if you go into my website, it comes up in a pop-up window, fionamaguire.com, and you just fill in your details, and it all gets sent to you. You get a few emails afterwards, but in the first email, you get the link to download the book, and it brings you through 3 daily exercises. And everyone that works with me, I'm always saying to them, have you grounded today? Have you cleared your energy? Have you set your energy field? They're fundamental. They're brilliant to do, and they really work.
That's awesome. I have some other contact information for those of you who want to get in contact with her as well. For those of you who are watching on LinkedIn, this is Fiona's LinkedIn profile. Make sure that you are connecting with her there. You saw the website, which is her name, .com, FionaMaguire.com. Make sure you go there and look at the resources she has there. Make sure you connect with her so that you can get either the self-taught course or be able to work with her, which I would recommend working with her, because you just heard all of the stuff she shared. You heard the testimonials that were in the comments. You saw them. You heard how she has brought about immense and effective transformation in the lives of those that she has worked with. And so you need to get in contact with Fiona. Now, let me say this, Fiona, before we go. Aliri talked about the fact that you're able to do this remotely. And I was not here, but I remember hearing a lot of wonderful talk around you doing this for somebody in real time. And just, I'm putting you on the spot kind of now. Would you be willing to do that in the future for somebody, maybe somebody that's listening, somebody that's watching, or that may watch the replay? Would you be willing to do that again?
Well, I'm really glad that you said that, because actually next Tuesday I've got an event where I'm going to be doing with 3 people up to a maximum of 20 minutes a mini coaching session with them. So it'll probably be on Zoom, on the spot. I'll be reading your energy. We have a little discussion about it, and then I'll take you through an exercise that you notice a shift. And we'll be doing it live in front of an audience. Everyone can join that call, and 3 people will be picked at random. So you'll get a taste for it there and then, and you'll see it for free. And
That's
I love it. I can't wait. I'm really excited.
that's awesome. Be on the lookout for that, because there's some people who, you can tell them, but they want you to show them as well, right? And so
Yeah.
we're going to go ahead and accommodate those folks who, for some reason or another, this phenomenal conversation wasn't proof enough. You make sure you're in the building, on the proverbial building, on Tuesday, so that you can witness that either happen to you because you were randomly selected, or to watch that transformation be brought about in someone else, man. Listen, thank you. Let me give you some applause. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to share with us who you are, what you're passionate about, the path that you're on, and the process that you take people through. Thank you so much for that.
No, thank you so much for the time. Thank you, everyone that's come. And please reach out to me. I'm a good person, I'm a nice person, and I like to have a laugh and a giggle. So even if you just want a coffee, reach out to me.
Indeed. Listen, I'm going to put you in the back. Don't go anywhere. I'm going to close this out, and then we'll talk off camera. All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. I listen. You already know that when we do something like this, it's always going to be somebody who is going to leave you wanting something. And hopefully, what this conversation with Fiona has left you wanting is the transformation that comes from releasing the negative energy, the transformation that comes from uh, removing the stress, and comes from removing the anxiety, and all of the things that Fiona talked about. The process, she showed you the process that she takes you through, and who does not want that? Everybody wants that. And so let me just put her information on the screen again, just one more time. Go to her website, make sure that you are connecting with her and taking advantage of everything that she has to offer. We got a few more comments. We got Claire saying thank you. Claire, thank you for being here. We have Alexander saying thank you as well. Even Fiona's in the comments saying thank you all. And for all of you who were in here, Illyria and Barry and Christiana and Georgia and Jane and Tans and Karen and Raj and Boomy and John and Gareth and Mike. Hope I didn't miss anybody. Thank you so much for being a part of this experience. Again, go to FionaMaguire.com. Make sure you are connecting with her. Listen, you heard the transformation, and we all want to be in that space where we are intuitive and we are living through this transformative experience that Fiona can provide. All right. Now, with that being said, again, I'm Oliver Marcel. Thank you for being here for this exclusive interview, and we will see you in another episode. Take care.